Juan Garrido plunged his sword into Tenochtitlan's canals, not for gold, but to bury African wheat seeds in Aztec soil. In the cycle of the years when the strangers from the east came upon our floating city like vultures drawn to a feast, I, a humble scribe of the Nawa who etched memories onto bark paper while the world crumbled, beheld this warrior of shadowed flesh among the bearded invaders. He had crossed the endless waters, as he whispered to me in stolen moments, born in lands where the sun scorched the earth black, sold as a youth in Lisbon's harbors where chains clanked like the jaws of Quetzalcoatl devouring his own tail. Yet he claimed freedom through the waters of their baptism, his name Juan Garrido ringing like a bell forged in foreign fires. In the year one read, 1519 by their reckoning, as the lake winds carried omens of blood, I spied Garrido sharpening his Toledo steel beside the Captain Cortés on the causeway's edge. The blade hissed against the whetstone, its grit rough under his fingers like the scales of a serpent god, sparks flying like fireflies escaping the night. Our Aztec scouts, crouched amid the reeds with hearts pounding like war drums, noted his skin like obsidian polished by the gods of the underworld, gleaming dark and unyielding, his armor like the moon's pale glow cast upon stormy waves. They whispered of him as a demon ally, a man from the shadowed realms beyond the sea, standing shoulder to shoulder with Cortés as plans were laid for the assault on our sacred precincts. Garrido's voice, deep as the rumble from his Taxihuatl slopes, recounted to me later how he had sailed from Seville, leaving behind the clank of shackles in Veracruz port, where men of his hue arrived bound in iron that bit into skin like thorns from maguey plants. His hands, now free, gripped the hilt with purpose, the touch of steel's coarse edge a far cry from the smoothness he would later know. As the battles erupted like the fury of Huitzilopochtli unleashed, the air filled with the acrid smoke of gunpowder and the sharp tang of blood-fertilized earth, where warriors' life essence soaked the ground like offerings to nourish the sun. Garrido stormed the temple steps, his sword swinging like baptized thunder, cleaving through Macuahuitl clubs and cotton armor, his boots slipping on the slick stone painted red. Blood-slicked sandals crushed maize stalks in the fields turned battlegrounds, the brittle crackling underfoot mingling with the cries of the fallen, feathers scattering like storm-tossed petals. From the captives' trembling lips, I heard the shout, "Yen Garrido!" rise amid the chaos, a name that echoed in the pages of the Florentine Codex, where friars later compelled us to record the invaders' deeds. In our own Aztec codices, such as the Telleriano Romensis and Escatitlan, he was depicted as the warrior with night skin beside Cortés, inked in black and crimson, his form striding forward with lance in hand, a striking figure amid the whirl of arrows and atlatl darts, his presence etched as if the gods themselves had marked him for memory. The temple stones crashed down in deafening roars, tumbling like the wrath of Tezcatlipoca toppling false idols, the sound reverberating through the valleys and shaking the Chinampas. Garrido's blade sang through the fray, as he told me from his own lips, not for mere loot but for a share in the new world rising from the ashes. The smell of spilled blood, thick and metallic, clung to the air like incense from a profane sacrifice, fertilizing the soil where bodies lay twisted like discarded husks. His touch on the sword's hilt felt the ingrained grit of Toledo steel, scarred from strikes, a harsh reminder of the Conquest's toll, far removed from the gentle husks he would one day cradle. In the year 1521, when Tenochtitlan fell and the canals ran with the mingled waters of defeat, I witnessed Garrido at the baptism font erected hastily amid the rubble. He held an indigenous child, a small boy from the lakeside villages, orphaned in the siege, his tiny frame quivering like a reed in the wind, as the priest poured holy water from a silver vessel, murmuring incantations in their Latin tongue. The child's eyes widened at the cool splash, trickling down like tears from the rain god, while Garrido's strong arms steadied him, his voice joining the prayers he had learned in distant churches. The smell of copal incense, our ancient resin burned in secret by lingering priests, twisted through the air, mingling uneasily with the holy water's faint, blessed purity, a clash of worlds like smoke battling mist. Nearby, fresh communion wine breathed from the chalice, its fermented sweetness cutting the haze, a scent of their promised redemption that masked the underlying rot of conquest. The first Christian chapel rose on the pyramid's rubble, stones from Artiacali repurposed under Garrido's command, as he claimed in his tales to me. He spoke of hauling the blocks himself, the jagged edges scraping his palms raw, beams raised with ropes that burned like fire on callous skin. I touched the salt-stained ledger under my frayed fingertips, pages warped from the humid mists off Lake Texcoco, inking the names of the baptized, that child's among them, uttered by Garrido as a soul snatched from the old god's grasp. The crashing of temple stones still echoed in our ears, a violent thunder now silenced, giving way to the quieter rites where water washed away the past. Under the moonlit veil of Chapultec's fields, where ancient aqueducts whispered of bygone emperors, I saw Garrido's calloused hands pressing seeds into the earth, seeds like captive tears ferried from Africa's distant shores, their smooth husks gliding soft between his fingers, a balm against the memories of battle's grit. The wheat would sprout and whisper in the night breezes, stalks rustling like hushed confessions to the stars, growing where our maize had been trampled. But distant screams pierced the serenity from the encomiendas, where toilers bent under the lash, their wails carrying like ghosts across the valley, reminders of the shackles clanking in Vera Cruz port. Garrido had heard those irons himself, as he confided, forged in Lisbon's forges and clamped on wrists during the voyage, their cold bite a stark contrast to his now free hands sowing life in foreign soil. The smell of blood-fertilized earth lingered faintly, yielding to the earthy promise of new growth, while the touch of seed husks, velvety and full of hidden vigor, soothed the scars left by steel's unyielding edge. He experimented thus at his own cost, burying the grains in plots near the ruined temples, watching them take root amid the whispers of wheat stalks that danced like spirits unbound. The distant cries from the forced labors faded in those moments, but never fully, a haunting counterpoint to the gentle sounds of his fields. Garrido's voice, recounting these nights, carried a weariness like the sigh of wind through canyons, speaking of how his freedom, hard-won, allowed him to claim this earth, unlike the bound souls unloading ships in Vera Cruz, their chains rattling like warnings from the underworld. By the year they marked as 1538, in the cycle of 20 read, Garrido's call scratched across parchment in his petition to their distant king, words I overheard him dictate to a notary, his tone firm as obsidian. I, Juan Garrido, black resident of this city, appear before your mercy and state that I am in need of making a probanza to the perpetuity of the king, a report on how I served your majesty in the conquest and pacification of this new Spain. For these reasons stated above do I petition your mercy. I demand land for my service. Though he styled himself in stories as the Black Conquistador, the ink flowed like blood on a land deed, claiming plots for his labors, the quill's nib rasping like a faint echo of his sword's edge. He spoke of his journeys, with Cortés to the Pacific's hungry shores, to Puerto Rico's islands, to Cuba under Velázquez, all at his own peril, without allotment or pay, and how he first sowed wheat here, experimenting amid the ruins. Scribes among the conquerors omitted him from victory murals, their pigments brushing over his likeness as if erasing a shadow from the sunlit walls, pale faces alone gleaming in tales of triumph etched on church facades. Neighbors, in their willful forgetfulness, allowed thorny vines to overrun his chapel's location, stones sinking into the earth like forgotten offerings, paths choked with undergrowth as if the land itself conspired to bury his mark, memories dissolving like mist at dawn. In 1547, as his strength waned like the fading light of the fifth sun, Garrido dictated his will from a sickbed, bequeathing freedom to his mestizo children, 3 sons and daughters born of his marriage to an indigenous woman from the valleys, their features blending his night skin with her earthen tones like the merging of night and dawn. He spoke the words to me in a voice weakened but resolute. Land sown with wheat passed to them, liberty unchained from the fates that ensnared others, no irons to bind their futures as had once threatened his own. The document, sealed with wax that cooled like hardening lava, carried the essence of his life's twists, a final decree amid the whispering fields where his seeds had taken hold. His wheat grew tall where temple gods fell, and slave masters burned the records that